Rolling 1. You got it.
We actually. All right. So can you just explain just give us a sort of brief overview of your childhood? Can you just give us a brief overview of your childhood growing up in Texas and spending summers in West Yellowstone? What kinds of things would you do while you were on summer vacation with your family in Yellowstone? Describe the first treasure that you ever found. What about this one case? I think you found like an arrowhead when you were real young. Wow. When did you move from Texas to New Mexico, and whose idea was it? You just said that it was your idea to go to Texas. Do you mind just saying that it was your idea to go to New Mexico? When you spoke, you said that it was your idea to go to Texas, and I think you meant New Mexico. Do you mind just re-saying that? Okay. How did you come up with the idea to start an art gallery? In your gallery, you had a sort of different policy about whether people could touch the art or not. Can you explain that? Are you mischievous as well? Is there like a sort of the idea of creating a game for people out of this treasure? I mean, does that sort of play into it? Do you have like a sort of a side that likes to play games? No, in. Okay. You mentioned that you are a fly fisherman. Is there sort of a similarity between the idea of being a treasure hunter and trying to chase trout in a river? But you don't always, like when you go fishing or when you go treasure hunting or you're just out, you don't always find what you're looking for. But is that necessarily the point? Was that part of your motivation? Can you explain? Was that part of your motivation in creating this treasure hunt? Why?
We're going to turn over.
Okay.
Rolling 2.
So why use a poem? Are the clues like are they like what's the word I'm looking for? Are they like misleading or like twisted, or are they just like clear? Can you, by the starting point, do you mean the starting point in the book or the starting point in the Gotcha. Right. You had going back to your military service, you had a couple of close calls. Can you just give us a brief explanation of either one or both of those? All right. Sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked there. Can you tell us what's actually in the treasure box? Can you just where you saw the small clearing in the forest?
Yeah. Package it up more.
Yeah, sure. Do you mind sort of just condensing that down and just sort of explaining that you were shot down twice while flying in Vietnam? Can you just explain a few of the things, the physical items that are in the treasure chest? Yeah. But you also put your memoir in there or a biography of your. Yeah. Are you worried that the chest is out there like getting wet or weathered or? Do you want the treasure to be found in your lifetime? What do you want your legacy to be? Okay.
Rolling 3.
All right. What do you say to people who think you're crazy or a public nuisance, or that you're like getting people to dig up outhouses or graves or national parks or any of that kind of stuff? Do you feel like you want to inspire other people to have those feelings or to do things that are a little different than they would normally do? Can you just give us the sort of condensed version of your cancer diagnosis and when that was and what type of cancer you were diagnosed with? Did you get this idea from somebody or from something, or did it just strike you? Does that mean that you hid the chest in 1988? Said when you hid the chest, or what year?
Nature's like inspiration in nature.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, what is nature?
Oh, this is great. I think it's great. We'll ask some harder questions that you'll want to say no to soon enough here. Like, where's the treasure? All right. Can you just explain what was your motivation for hiding this thing in a beautiful place, or you know, in the Rocky Mountains, or your relationship with nature?
So your inspiration, nature. In nature, I mean, in the course of your life, what role has nature played in just in your life? I mean, obviously from fishing to just all of your exploration. I mean, your relationship?
What do you say? What do you say to these recent reports that the treasure has been found? This guy who had this theory about the warm water being soldiers crying at the Vietnam. Well, I mean, can you give us something that will help people, a 10th or 11th or a 12th clue? Yeah, can you tell us someplace that the treasure isn't buried, for example? Well, you mentioned you mentioned in the book that
Okay.
you're cutting.
Rolling 4.
So basically, the clue should be baked in the out is I've already said too much.
Sure.
It's cryptic. It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
cryptic delivery.
Right. Yeah. In your book, you mentioned that there are other clues sprinkled throughout. Not just in the poem. Can you point us toward one of the other ones that's in the book somewhere?
Have you told anybody that it's wet before? You mentioned that the treasure was wet. You said it. I was gonna say
Earlier, you mentioned that the treasure was wet. Is that an admission that it's above ground, like just sitting somewhere, or can you say whether it's buried or not? Is it in New Mexico somewhere? Let me try. I'm trying to think of another. Have you said whether the House of Brown is a brown trout?
Forrest, have you, just in terms of the clues that you have given, not asking for a new one, have you ever told people that the treasure is wet? What we're trying to do with this, is basically explain, we want the delivery of this, in this piece. Basically, our idea for this video is to basically we're not going to have you come out and say, here's a clue. What we want to end with, honestly, is you saying, I've already said too much, and make people think somewhere in what you've already delivered, there was a clue, but not, kind of a poetic, cryptic delivery is essentially what we're trying to say. So if you've never told people that the treasure is wet, then the clue is already there. You understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Do you mind saying that to me, though, instead?
Yeah, just one more time to him. Just say,
That's one thing I told you. I've answered a lot of questions.
can you say I've already said too much?
Okay, that's great. There were a couple of things from your book, a couple of lines from your book that we liked, that we thought we could just read to you and see if you would say them back to us. There was one that says, "What do you think? For me, it was always the thrill of the chase." No, that was a line from your book. I was wondering if you would just say that one back to us. Now, when we met with you last week, you'd mentioned about being able to tie a certain number of flies to sell in a certain amount of time. Can you explain that? Yeah, that's great.
That's great.
And then there was one other line. It'll make you rich with adventure.
No, that was
Oh,
what
that
we
was-
did. That was VO.
Oh,
No,
sorry.
it's more inspiring people. I mean, the adventure of you're inspiring people to go out and look for this. And
I think that's mostly got it. Is there any, is there anything else that you want to deliver to us to help get people excited for next summer's, treasure hunting season?
Like landscape description, basically being inspired by landscape kind of
What
stuff.
What about like if you could picture yourself where you were standing on the treasure? Can you describe like what it looks like in this area? Like what whether is it a beautiful place, or just give us a sort of like vague description of the place where it is? That's great. That's perfect. Okay.